I'm Patrick Bozick, and I'm here with Jared, and we're gonna do our normal thing. So we're gonna do a couple hot topics, a little bit of news, get
Half
out
the
of here in about
team,
10, 15 minutes. Oh yeah, well, I mean,
man.
Casey's like not here all that time, all that often, so
No, but we
but
like it when he's here.
we
We
do.
do. And
Or
Ren, well,
feels,
Ren needed a day, just a day off.
yeah,
You
that's
know,
true. She's got a lot going on, but I'm
that's
sure
true.
she's enjoying it. And two's fun. Four's kind of a crowd. I don't know.
Oh, two's fine, but like I don't know. I don't like you that much, so
That's true.
whatever.
Nobody does. Anyways, convex.
Yeah. So you were at Convex. I want to know. This is something I brought up just right before we started. There are obviously topics, and I've heard Convex was great. I saw pictures of the facility, and frankly, I'm a little jealous because it looked like the actual location was very cool.
It
Um,
was actually. It was really awesome.
I've heard it. Yeah, I've heard it. I mean, multiple people have been like, "That was a sweet location."
It
What
was.
I'm curious about are conversations that you were a part of, or things that you heard that happened outside of the presentations. Like, were there any specific trends, or other than like we know AI is there, so if it's about AI, cool, would love to hear it. But what did you hear outside of the actual sessions that was an interesting or thought provoking?
So starting on a less serious note, and I haven't told you this. I was waiting for
Oh,
components to tell
springing
you
it on me.
this,
You want to get the real
I'm
time
just going to
reaction.
say it.
Good.
Um, Deadly serious. No less than four people walked up to the Hereto booth and said, "Where's Jared?"
Yes.
And we're like, "What?" And they were like, "No, I came up here specifically to talk to Jared." It like became a joke of the conference. So there's one of your water cooler things. Everybody likes
Yes,
you
awesome.
better than whoever else
Oh,
we had there.
I
Um,
miss everybody at Convex. It's a great conference.
it is and we'll have to have you there next year. But in terms of the actual industry, I mean, AI was the big thing this
Of
year.
course,
Like,
of
no,
course.
that's no surprise to anybody. One of it was kind of like one and a half tracks were kind of AI based.
Okay.
So track one was pretty much exclusively AI, and then there were a few things that kind of bled over into track two that I saw that were very AI focused, and then there was just a lot of it throughout the rest of the conference.
Yep.
There was still some conversation around um, getting a better place in the organization, selling value, those kinds of
Yep.
things, which I think is
Typical.
good, like leadership conversation. That, and there was some of that kind of throughout, like breakfast and lunch, and like people were still talking about how do we approach building coalitions and like getting the right systems in place. But just like at DITA Europe, DITA EU a few
Yep.
months ago, there's no doubt that the industry feels the value of content in a way that it hasn't in a really long time. And there's a general sense of urgency, and there was again a very vibrant um, energy in the room where people like
Yep.
realized that this had to happen, and they were the ones that needed to do it.
Hmm.
So I think that was kind of my biggest takeaway. I left feeling like really good and really energized, which was cool.
Yep. So did you described it as an urgency? Was that urgency? Do you think it's driven by fear of what's coming or excitement that like I mean in the for us in the data space we kind of see like we see AI tools coming and we're like, hey, cool, structured
Right.
content is great. So like for us it's not a fear-based thing. When we approach it, it's like the urgency is this kind of almost like excited anticipation. Is that what
Mhm.
you noticed there, or did you gather that there's like still some fear associated with these things coming to take over roles and things?
It's funny. So there's a little bit of both.
Okay.
There's a lot of excitement. There was, I would say, some concern for people who didn't feel like they had a clear path to extracting value
I see.
from some of the AI systems and projects. Um, so the people that really felt like they were on a solid foundation, whatever, however you want to qualify that, I think there was more excitement than there was concern at a macro level.
Okay.
That said, it's very common that people are still kind of like, does this change the shape of my role? And either like, I think the whole like, is it going to replace me? I feel like we're a little bit past that now.
Yep.
Not maybe not universally, but by and large. I think there's more of like, does it change the value of my role? And the
Sure.
value of my role thing is a little bit more interesting. But I think as people started to really look at that, one of the things the conversations I would have is I would basically say, anybody here who can work a 40-hour week and get all of their work done, raise your hand. And nobody raised their hand.
Yeah.
Right? Like every content development team, every information development team, all of them are overworked.
Yeah.
And I think that everybody feels that, and they're starting to see that this automation, as they're being asked to do a lot more, and they're not being given more resources because nobody is, and there's insane expectations. It might be able to give them their life back a little bit. So instead of having to work 60, 70-hour weeks to just keep up, that there could be something that could take 10, 20, 30% of their time, and just like give it back to them and like let them have a decent work-life balance. So that seemed to be pretty exciting to people. And I think it should be.
And I mean, I've said this multiple of these podcasts at this point. Our own integration build of an AI tool into our system has saved me a lot of time. Like whenever I prep for a demo, I lean heavily on Edo, on the AI tool that we've built, and like I get prepped for those demos much faster, and it's much less stressful for me now. And it's a very simple, like I'm just pasting content in and being like, hey, structure it this way, and it'll build the structure for me. I look at it, I scan it, and I'm like, looks good, accept the change and move on to the next one. It's so much more efficient than me doing it. I hate to say that. Like I hate so much that a machine is better than me at this. Like
realistically, machines are better than you at a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. But so one thing is like, this is silly, but I love the tactile experience of typing on a keyboard. Like I really do. Okay. And I don't get to do that as much anymore because it just does it.
Yeah, and you can talk to it if you're Casey.
Yeah, I don't ever do that though. I've not once used that. Yeah, maybe I should.
All right. So I don't think there's really anything else from Convex. You got any other questions?
No. That's pretty good. I know we have one other like main thing that we want to talk about, and it's funny how much it's been coming up lately. So I'll let you introduce the article.
Because I got it into the document first.
Yeah, because it's your article and not mine.
Yeah, it's mine. Yeah, that's not my article, but it is an article that's been making the rounds, and I feel like it was worth putting in here and talking about a little bit. So if people haven't seen it, there's an article published by a woman named Sarah Moir. I assume that I'm pronouncing that right, Moir. Anyways, the article is. You're better at this, right? That's the proper pronunciation.
I'm not better at this. I'm worse. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I'm sorry, Sarah.
If that's not how you pronounce your last name, I apologize. But the article is great. It's called "Docs as Code as a Broken Promise." It's a pretty strong title. Okay. The attention grabbing. The article is actually quite balanced, and it's something that's really well written and delivered. She focuses really heavily on what I view as like the user experience and therefore the efficiency around Docs as Code, and how some of those things have and haven't worked, and like where all those things fall together. And it's a really well-timed article because I feel like this conversation has like really reignited recently. And in some places, I think it's being had in a really meaningful and like productive and balanced way. And in other places, it feels like the vitriol on it has gotten turned up, and the people are just saying things that make no sense. But this is a great addition to the conversation.
Yeah, I read it, and I think it's like well balanced. I was just in a conversation earlier today where with a prospective customer, and they said, "What do you think are the benefits of going to highly structured content like DITA versus a Docs as Code methodology?" And it's a good question. But it's a question that, I mean, we can agree or disagree over this, but like I tend to be very pragmatic about approaches to these kinds of things. I love idealism, but I'm also very pragmatic. And like there are times where Docs as Code is great, and it is the right approach for a team. But I think for typical tech pubs, this article highlights some of the real struggles that you have with Docs as Code. Like the assumption is, well, developers are going to be contributing to the documentation, and that's a good thing, and it is. and then we're going to have some writers and they're going to contribute as well. And the assumption is just, let's just get to work and make it fast and it's going to be simple. But it's not that simple, because your tech writers aren't trained often. They're often not trained with things like GitHub. And GitHub is going to be part of your life if you're in a Docs as Code methodology. Like, it's some type of source control like that will be your life.
But even on top of that, like let's say you have everybody really well trained on the Docs as Code tool chain and all those types of things. I think the fundamental challenge that really creeps into all of these implementations is that none of them are exactly out of the box, and they all have to
Right.
like conform to certain needs of the organization, and they all end up continuous projects. And what
And that, well, I mean, that's one of the promises of it, is like,
right,
make this fit your organization. But to make it fit is a lot of work.
right, and that ends up being multiple people.
Right.
So you end up with, and so I talk to a lot of people in this industry, both like in a professional way and just over, drinks whenever I have the opportunity. Um, and I have definitely seen situations where Docs as Code makes a ton of sense. The most obvious
Yes.
one is when developers are legitimately 80 to 90% of the writing force. Like
Yeah,
if you're in a
for
situation
sure.
where most of your content is coming from a developer audience, it makes total sense. But that's not that many organizations when you really boil it down. I think there's a lot of organizations that have to get review and contribution from developers,
Mhm.
but like having them be the bulk of the actual words contributed, I haven't seen that a ton of times. So you end up in this circumstance where you have very often multiple people simply maintaining the tool chain,
Yeah.
and the math just doesn't work. So FTEs are pretty expensive.
Yeah.
And they're also single points of failure. So you introduce risk to the organization and a large expense. Whereas like most modern CCMSs, not all, but most are, for a team of 10, 20, up to 50 writers, they're going to be 1 to 2 FTE equivalent at the max, probably more like 50% of an FTE. So like
Yeah.
the straight economics of it just don't work. And I think that's the part of it that's been a little puzzling to me. And
Yeah.
it's the part of the conversation that even today I've seen a little bit left out. And I'd like to see people like talking about that a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, I had this every time I hear about Docs as Code, even if somebody's using Dita, but they're doing this almost in like, if they're doing something like Oxygen and Git, both great tools, but you have to have somebody committed to the administration of that pipeline. And it's the same if you're doing Docs as Code. You've got to have people committed to the administration of that. When I have done admin level trainings in our CCMS, I mean, I'm not an expert in any of the other CCMSs out there, but when I've done admin level trainings in ours, I tell people, like, this is going to be our shortest training that we do. It's going to take 30 to 45 minutes. And the reason is because the system handles so many of the things behind the scenes that in a Docs as Code framework, somebody has to be trained in Git. And that is what they are devoted to, is managing those pipelines. And a CCMS is designed to just do that stuff for you. Like, that is one of its main jobs, is to do those kinds of administrative tasks. Like, it doesn't take that long to become an admin in a CCMS.
Yeah, I think that this is a classic tools argument. Like, we've known for a long time that open source isn't free. Um, Now that, I mean, like we use some open source technologies, like every
Mhm.
organization is going to use some open source technologies. I think the challenge becomes when it goes from being like a pragmatic decision because either you have bespoke requirements that don't have enough people who need them for a vendor to support it well, and it's better to build internally, or there's legitimately an economic reason to use open source. I think that when you cross the line over into use open source, just because is where you start to run into challenges. And I both see that that is still really prevalent in the Docs as Code paradigm, but I also see people starting to really question that.
Yeah.
And I think I don't necessarily think that's going to result in less Docs as Code. I don't think Docs as Code is going away because I think it's a valuable part of the ecosystem. But I think that it might mean that we're in a place now where it's going to be used at the right times for the right things rather than just dogmatically because it's the cool
Yeah.
thing to do right now.
Yeah. What is you made some comment to me recently about what if you ask developers to switch up the tools that are designed for them? I think it's a good point. It's a good point.
Yeah, so I mean, it was kind of a joke, more of a glib comment, but the
Sure.
comment was like,
That's who we are.
That's true. All right, fine. We'll end on that. So the one of the primary justifications for Docs as code is always, well, it gets you closer to where the developers are. Like it's in the developers tool chain. I mean, that's fundamentally Docs
Yep.
as code, right? And it's kind of wild to me because like if you went to developers and you were like, okay, you should use tools which are suboptimal for your work so you can be closer to the writers and the UX folks, you get laughed out of the room. Like it's just like nobody would agree to do that.
Right.
And then you're in the situation where writers are part of the product, their deliverable is part of the product, but they also have this really unique aspect of what they deliver, which is that deadlines almost never, I'm not going to say never, but basically never get extended for the docs, but they still have to be done.
Yeah.
Like how many teams have we seen working until 1 a.m. on a Friday because the release goes out on Monday, or the release technically went out on Friday? Whereas like if development isn't done, it just doesn't go out because the thing doesn't do anything. So,
Right.
But like if it's done, if development's done, docs has to happen even when the timeline gets compressed. And I know so many writers that end up in that situation all the time. And then you're going to put them into something which is less efficient for them to actually get their jobs done. And like, I don't know. I mean, obviously I've got an opinion on this, but like
You have an
to me,
opinion.
it's great. It's crazy.
All right, I have a hot take. I'm just going to say it and walk away. It's a mic drop for me. I think
right.
print media is coming back with a vengeance.
What kind of print media?
All of it, man. Just watch.
All of it?
Print media is going to come back.
I mean, I do actually subscribe to more magazines today than I ever have. So
Same. Actually.
There's your data point.
And I want to hold them. I don't want to download them. I want to hold them.
That's true. I used to own a Kindle. I do not own a Kindle anymore, or maybe I do, and it's in a box somewhere. But I buy books exclusively now. Yep. So you might be right. Maybe print's making a comeback.
It will.
All right. Have a good one. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a great weekend. Catch you later.